program. I'd like to welcome you to this Center for Mindful Eating members-only webinar entitled Food, Sustainability, and the Role of Mindfulness with Baerten of Belgium. My name is Stephen. I'll be your host. Thank you so much for joining us today. Before we begin, I would like to briefly give you some background about the Center for Mindful Eating. TCME was created for professionals who want to learn about the value of mindfulness and mindful eating. The Center for Mindful Eating does not promote or advocate one single approach to mindful eating. Excuse me. Rather, we are committed to sharing ideas and practices, clinical experience, and research. As this is a members-only program, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank you for your support and membership. Without you, we wouldn't be here. We have numerous resources available to you on our website, including a full archive of talks, publications, networking opportunities, and more. If you need assistance accessing your TCME resources, please contact us at info@tcme.org. Everyone who attends today will receive one CPE issued from Skelly Skills, which is approved for RDs. A short survey will be emailed to you following the presentation where you can obtain your certificate. The Center for Mindful Eating is a nonprofit organization that is member supported. Your membership not only provides an extensive list of benefits, but also helps support our free programs that are open to the public, helping us to meet our mission of providing educational resources to learn more about the practices and benefits of mindful eating. Thank you for being a part of the Center for Mindful Eating. Introducing our speaker today, I am delighted to introduce Carolyn Baerten, RD, who will be presenting Food Sustainability and the Role of Mindfulness. Our spring Food for Thought issue is on the theme of sustainability, and this program will draw on some of the themes in this publication. To read more, see on our website the section labeled Food for Thought. Caroline is a mindfulness-based dietitian, an integrative psychotherapist specializing in work with disordered eating behavior, weight issues, and sustainability. She is a Mindfulness-Based Stress Reduction, MBSR, trainee with the Center for Mindfulness at the UMass Medical School and is a student of Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh at the Institute of Applied Buddhism in Germany. Now I'm going to turn the webinar over to Caroline. This program is being recorded and will be available following the presentation.
Thank you, Stephen. Well, yes, since 2 years I serve on the board of Center for Mindful Eating, and it's a pleasure to share my experience and knowledge with you all. So the webinar will last 60 minutes and is divided into 2 segments. There's a short breathing space in between, and there's a possibility to ask questions, and I will answer them at the end of each segment. And Stephen will assist you if you need support. So my suggestion, if you ask questions, is that you, and if you do it verbally, is that you just give your first name and where you're located, and then briefly let us know what kind of work you do, if you like. So I see it as a way of networking and experiencing the global connection in this field of mindful eating. So again, thank you very much for joining us today. So before we start the webinar, I would like to have 2 minutes of a short meditation. And it's the first exercise I use actually in every mindful eating training I facilitate in Europe. So it's called mindful attention. So if you're doing something which distracts you from being aware of this present moment, I would like to invite you to set all these things aside and take the opportunity to bring mind and body together at this moment. So I will invite the bell, and then we can drop in. And then sitting here quietly and offering yourself these 2 minutes of awareness in your daily schedule. And in this open awareness, maybe there are sounds, cars passing, or voices, maybe even birds you can hear. Maybe hearing the breath entering and leaving the body. The sounds of breathing. And while focusing on the breathing, maybe noticing how the air touches the nostrils and when it's flowing in and out. Noticing the temperature, warm or cold. Humidity or dryness in the nose. While focusing on the breathing, you can also notice that the chest expands and contracts. The sensations of the breathing in the belly. Simply holding your attention on the experience itself. You may notice that within just a few moments the mind will have wandered off onto something else. This happens to all of us and can then kindly and non-judgmentally pointing our attention back to the present moment, sensations of the body. So thank you for joining in this collective and global moment of awareness. There are people from all over the world joining in this webinar. So to give you an overview, in the first segment of this webinar, I will talk about the relationship with the earth and how we deal with suffering. And then we will focus on the role of mindfulness and awareness of the senses as a way to come in contact with nature. When practicing mindfulness, also compassion will arise. So the question will be, may compassion benefit to more sustainable living? And halfway in this webinar, we will have again 2 minutes of contemplation. And there's also time to answer some questions. In the second segment, I would like to explain the concept of interconnectivity and then briefly research at Wageningen University in the Netherlands, where I was facilitating a mindful eating nature awareness training. And then at the end of this webinar, there's again time for questions and answers. I would like to start with a quote of David Abram. And David Abram is a philosopher and ecologist. He wrote numerous books and essays. And it's a strong and daring statement where he says, the ecological crisis might be the result of a collective perceptual disorder in our species. It's a unique form of myopia, which it now forces us to correct. And it's a strong statement he makes that we suffer from a collective myopia. But if you look around, there is quite a lot of numbing. Ignoring is a way to defend ourselves against witnessing the suffering of the earth in our times. What I think is interesting is that collective myopia is not different than individual myopia. There are also moments that we run away from what is calling us. The same behavior we do with the cry of the earth, the suffering of the earth. So in response of this suffering, personal suffering or collective suffering, we build defenses, or we choose among a variety of convenient distractions. This process of numbing unpleasant feelings or ignoring what we might hear and see may also sound familiar to professionals who work with people who are suffering with eating behavior or other disorders. It is for us as human beings not easy to look at suffering. We prefer to run away from it or fight against it, or just find pleasant distractions such as eating. It's true that full awareness can hurt, and the consequences will be that our own inner suffering and the suffering of the earth are not addressed in an adequate way. So, if you take now a moment of reflection, how do you personally respond when things are falling apart? How do you behave in a stressful situation? Are you capable to stay with it? Or do you react in a certain automatic way? So now we make a shift to what is the role of mindfulness in sustainable living? And it all starts with being aware, and being aware is the opposite of numbing. So attending is the flip side of numbing. We can be aware of our senses and the objects of awareness. Our senses can taste food, smell fresh air in the morning, or baked bread. Our senses can hear the birds, see colors, or making physical contact, such as walking on the earth, or touching the trunk of a tree, or the petals of an animal. These sensory capacities, I believe, are the fundamental avenues of connection between the self and the world. So the deadening of our senses, the numbing of our senses, is at the heart of the environmental crisis. So deadening our senses, I believe, is at the heart of the environmental crisis. And then reawakening them through mindfulness is an integral step towards renewing our bond with the earth and all living beings. but how to reawaken our senses. And to fully use our attentional capacity is a learned skill. It requires the practice of mindfulness and awareness. It's only by slowing down and, for example, eating with awareness, we can really enjoy our food on a sensual level. It's the energy of focused attention which produces a richness of color, taste, and flavors. And in this sensory experience, deep joy will arise when we connect with our senses and the beauty of the natural environment. When we look with curiosity and openness at, for example, a big old tree, or the colors on our plate, or when walking in the mountains or in the green woods, we feel fully alive. According to Vietnamese Zen teacher Thich Nhat, he says, the first step is learning to attend, the cultivation of a wakeful presence. When the mind isn't present in the body, we look, but we don't see. We listen, but we don't hear. We eat, but we don't know the flavor of the food. We breathe, but we don't feel alive. And as we make behavioral choices based on what we see, smell, hear, all the senses, I think it would be wise, especially in the context of our ecological situation and the need for sustainable choices. I think it would be wise to become more mindful of where we place our attention. And the second aspect of mindfulness practice is that by slowing down, we will become aware of the surrounding nature and also more in contact with the natural processes within us. We start noticing that nature, food, body, emotions, and mind can't be separated. They are interconnected. And it's only through clear understanding of the impact of our actions that we can see how unwholesome food patterns or food habits create suffering for the body and mind. So becoming aware of these negative tendencies, especially greed and the feeling of not enough, may help us to learn that to eat nourishing foods and the right amount of food. What I see in Western society is that there's a lot of food waste, and often based on ignorance about what the effect may be on our food production system. So by practicing mindfulness, we will have more insight into what the short and long-term impact will be for our bodies, for our own bodies, and also a larger body, which is the earth. And these insights, based on awareness, will bring a shift how we relate with the nature inside and outside ourselves. Mindfulness is essential, I believe, to reawaken our senses, to see clearly the interconnectivity of all life. And finally, mindfulness helps us to shift perspective from the little self, the little ego, towards a more environmental awareness. And Robert Greenway, he's a professor of psychology in the US. He has more than 30 years of experience with transpersonal wilderness courses. He reported that participants who seriously practice mindfulness while in nature were able to hold the same open awareness in their daily lives. But also the opposite was true. The opposite was also noted that those who practiced mindfulness in their urban environment were more aware of their interactions with nature and natural processes. And they could express more empathy and feelings of compassion for animals and had a caring attitude towards nature. So this means, on the one hand, being capable to enjoy the beauty of nature, and at the same time being open for the suffering without turning away, without numbing, but taking action wherever is needed or wherever is possible. What I see is also in my trainings is that when we are fueled by the beauty of nature and sensuality, our relationship with the visual world may move our hearts. As what we see and perceive becomes more meaningful and vital, it's like we feel it in every cell of our bodies. Empathy is a feeling. It is felt by sensations in the bodies and shifts in our heart. Mindful and compassionate approach is essential if we want to care for the earth and all living beings. And to use again the words of Zen teacher Thich Nhat Hanh, he said, we need to take time to look and to view the earth through the eyes of compassion. It's true, if we don't look at the earth with this mindset, we will never care how our food is cultivated, or how the animals are treated, or the conditions of the bees at this moment, or what the impact is of our food choices on the earth. So, okay, we pause here for a moment and using this time space to again tune in. And just take a moment, because many things have been said, and maybe we became less aware of the physical sensations in the body, and that's perfectly normal. So taking this opportunity now to feel where the different parts of the body make contact with the chair, or feeling the back of the chair. Feeling the points where the hands make contact with each other or another object. The temperature or the differences in temperature. And bringing the awareness to both feet, resting on the floor. Maybe noticing if there's a light touch or firm standing. Being aware of the toes, the heels, There's a moment for questions and answers, and Stephen will facilitate us in that process. I'm happy to listen to your questions.
Thank you, Caroline. If you could just, on your panel, raise your hand if you'd like to be recognized. Or you could type a question. Well, so far, Caroline, I don't see any questions, so maybe we just continue.
We just continue then. Okay. At the end of the webinar, there's also time and space for questions and answers. So if a question will arise in the second segment of this webinar, please hold this question and I'm happy to answer. Okay, we go to the second segment and we will explore the deeper interconnectivity. It's in a book of Theodore Rorschach. It's a book called The Voice of the Earth from 1993. Theodore Rorschach, he presents a theory in which he explains that the roots of our collective behavior towards the earth can be found in the split between in here and out there. And it is this mindset which creates a large gap between ourselves, the human beings, and the non-human world, the animals, the plants, the minerals. And our ego, and in this context I will translate it as a collection of cognitive abilities, is our ego serves of various need-fulfilling activities like thirst, hunger, sleep, and so on. However, when the ego is overstimulated or used to excess, for example in overeating or overconsumption, it will split us. It will split us from natural processes. Or rather, and I think this is important, it would lead us to believe that we are split from nature. Our ego is capable to lead us to believe that we are split from nature. And certainly our Western cultural experience, urbanized as it is, does reinforce this conviction that we are separated from nature. So on the contrary, if we would experience ourselves as interconnected and with fluidity of boundaries, this would manifest in more empathy. And empathy in other human beings, in humanity, and similar with the whole of the non-human world. And mindful eating means deep looking into the food. It's calligraphy of Zen teacher Thich Nhat, where he says, "The breath in my hand contains the whole universe." And actually what he is saying, nothing comes from nothing. There is that element of interbeing. Breath comes from the wheat fields, which needs rain and sunshine. So in every slice of bread, there's also the sun. There are the clouds. There's the earth, the soil, time and space, which are necessary for growth. And in the bread, there's also the hard work of the farmer, the supplier, the baker. So the whole universe has come together in this piece of bread. And eating mindfully is a way of showing appreciation for all the hard and loving work that has gone into creating a meal. So while we eat, we can be mindful of the food and mindful of the community. I think it's a chance to receive the many gifts of the earth, from which we would not otherwise benefit if the mind is elsewhere. If we are distracted, we miss this opportunity to receive the many gifts of the earth. And it's thanks to being aware and having a correct view of our consumption, we will see more clearly the effect of eating behavior on the human body and emotional and mental states. The question is, how do we consume, or how do we want to consume? For example, if we eat systematically beyond our physical needs, we will not only stress our bodies and internal organs, but we also will put pressure on the earth, who has to produce these large amounts of food. And this means then more pollution of soil and rivers, more cutting of trees, killing of animals, more transportation, and so on. And secondly, when practicing mindfulness, we will see more clearly the effect of our own eating behavior on the food system. The industrial scale, the food supplies, grain prices, global emission, etc. So can we be mindful where the food comes from? We can have reflections such as, do I want to support this production method? Or do I want to contribute to these techniques, how animals are raised? To deepen this aspect of interconnectivity, which is essential for to understand sustainability on a global level, we can also see that when practicing mindfulness and compassion, we are able to distinguish wholesome and unwholesome actions. On a personal level, eating in a sustainable way is about being aware of the quality of our food and determination to ingest only food that keeps the body healthy and compassion alive. It is eating in a way that doesn't cover up the stressful feelings, but acknowledges them and helps to transform them. Mindful consumption involves recognizing exactly what we need to consume and what not to consume to keep our bodies and minds in balance. On a global level, eating in a sustainable way is about being aware what the earth needs to stay healthy for the future generations and not become depleted by exploitation or mindless overconsumption. So then in the last part of this webinar, I would like to share with you a pilot study at Wageningen University in the Netherlands. And in this pilot, there were 20 participants divided in two groups. There were 100% women groups with an average age of 49 years, and they all had followed higher education. One group received a classic nutritional and sport intervention program during 9 weeks, and the other group received a mindful eating training. The intervention consisted of 2 full days of workshops given by me, and it all was held at an ecological farm in the Netherlands. And there were home assignments with focus on how, why one eats, discerning physical and emotional hungers, and looking deeply into the food to see the origins of food. And the book which was used for the participants of the mindful eating training was the Mindful Eating book of Jan Chosenbees. So in this research, we've explored how change can happen based on the tipping point theory of Martin Scheffer. We can say that lifestyle changes are not easy because there are conditioned habits, there are unconscious thoughts or emotions, such as thoughts linked with low self-esteem, or emotions as fear or frustration. And all these habit patterns or thoughts and emotions can prevent us to shift from an unbalanced to a more balanced life pattern. And also in this research, there was a strong focus on nature and environment. We know from studies that the environment we live in and the time we spend in a natural environment determines how our mental and physical health will be. So our food choices and eating behavior are the accumulation of all these 3 domains: the conditioned habits, thoughts and emotions. They all influences how we relate with food and the body and the urban or natural environment we are living in. So bringing awareness to all these 3 domains, the conditions of change will be set. So I would like to briefly share with you the content of these 2-day workshops. The first day has the title "Lose Your Mind, Come to Your Senses," based on Fritz Perls. And the first aim was to reconnect with the body, the physical sensations, and the food. It means becoming mindful of senses and physical hungers. How did we do that? We used the raisin exercise. There was a mindful silent lunch. And this way the participants could become aware of the level of hunger and fullness, or their feeling of satisfaction after lunch. And the second aim was to reconnect with body, so the physical sensations, and nature. We explore that in moments of mindful walking in the vegetable garden of the farm. We also did the tree pose outside. And finally, the third aim was to reconnect with nature and food. So there we observed the interconnectivity of the 4 elements in food, nature, and human body. So observing the water element, the earth element, the fire, for example, the temperature of food during lunch, feeling the warmth of the sun on the skin, experiencing the temperature in the body. And the second day Well, there were 3 weeks in between the two workshops, and in the meantime they would meet. So they would meet in their own group. They would. There were also home assignments, and there were. They could read chapters in the book of Jan Beers. So, and then the second day we would further explore the concept of interconnectivity on a more deeper level. And day 2, the title was "Lose Your Mind, Come to Your Heart," instead of the senses. Just to give you an example of one of the exercises we did in day 1, the participants planted seeds in a soil, in a small pot with soil. The seeds were fast growing grass, and they cared after the little plants during those 3 weeks in between the two workshops. And then on day 2, they would bring the plants back to the farm, and with a scissor would cut the fresh leaves, and they would eat these grass during the lunch. So they were eating their own homegrown field grass. And in this practice, participants would become aware of all the elements which are involved to create this food. So the elements of water, air, temperature, soil, and then also important, their own mindful presence in this food process. Because without their mindful presence, they would never be able to care after these little plants. So, and then the second day was ended with a heart meditation, metta it calls, to cultivate kindness within themselves. Kindness for their close friends, families, and then also for the larger community, and finally for all living beings. So the final results is, well, it was interesting to see these results because it was a pilot study, and 20 persons is statistically very small. If you look at the graphic, and my apologies, it's only in Dutch, but you see on your left side, it's written the weight of the participants, which were measured, and then on the bottom line there's intervention with time. And you see the first arrow says tipping point from unhealthy, unbalanced behavior to balanced behavior. So there was, in the participants, we could see there was a moment where they would start losing weight. Interesting, in time we see also a tipping point from healthy behavior to, again, unhealthy behavior. So in this pilot study, it was not easy to make conclusions, as there was also a dropout. There were some technical problems with measuring the weight, and the participants weren't representative for the Dutch population because we were 100% women group, and they all had higher education. But what we could observe is the existence of a tipping point in lifestyle behavior. Is a moment where individuals decide to bring change in their lives. However, this point is not stable, and there is a relapse after some days, weeks, or even months. But just to mention, mindful eating is not a weight loss intervention. So during the workshops, I've never mentioned weight or weight reduction. The focus in this mindful eating nature awareness training was to reconnect with the nature within themselves and the nature outside themselves. It's a long-term process of care and self-care. And But I believe becoming mindful of the own real needs and bringing this wisdom in balance with the needs of the earth will create a more sustainable way of living. So the conclusion, the final conclusion of this webinar is reconnecting with the body, mind, and own suffering, and seeing the interconnection between all these elements is necessary to bring a shift in unbalanced lifestyle to a more balanced lifestyle. I think the second learning step is to take action by being aware of wholesome and unwholesome intentions. Just becoming aware of these intentions can set the conditions for internal change and later maybe also external change. And the third learning step is making a shift from my suffering. So me, my, and the ego who's talking there, to the suffering of all living beings. So to connect and feel empathy and compassion with all living beings. So we have now a moment for questions and answers, and I'm happy to listen to you and listen to your feedback.
Thank you, Caroline. That was very thought-provoking presentation. So if you would like to have your microphone unmuted so that you could ask Caroline a question, there's the little hand in your panel that you could click on to raise your hand. Or if you'd prefer to just type in a question, I'll read it for you. So I'm not seeing any questions. Oh, wait a minute. Karen has a question, so I'm going to unmute Karen and she'll go ahead and ask. Karen, are you with us? Karen, would you like to ask your question?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me? Okay, great. Hi, Caroline.
Hi, Karen.
I've enjoyed listening to this. I am really just fairly new to mindfulness. It's been something that I want to explore, and this is really very thought-provoking. One of the questions I had was, I'm sure you have given some thought to the results that you showed with the weight loss, even though that wasn't the focus, and then sort of the relapse, if you will. Do you think that what do you think would be the next step to sort of help people maintain that mindfulness and connection that they were feeling, you know, and or experiencing during the workshop?
Yes, thank you, Karen. It's a very interesting question because I think as health professionals, we all deal with this because relapse is part of the intervention. It's like going back from almost where they came from to learn from it and then make again a step forward. So it's also how do we approach relapse. So that's one aspect that I was thinking about, and that just pop up in my mind. Another aspect is in this, and in general actually in mindful eating intervention, or mindful eating trainings, there's that element of non-striving. We don't strive for a certain outcome. Of course, it was a research. It was a pilot study, and in studies, well, as a researcher, you have to measure not only the quality of the intervention, but also the quantity. Quantity questionnaires. So for that reason, we have introduced the scale and measuring the weight, but there wasn't any focus on weight loss, because what I noticed, and I've been working since 2007 with mindful eating, and I've seen quite a lot of people. I've done many mindful eating trainings. Is every participant, almost like every participant, starts the mindful eating training with the aim of losing weight, especially if they're overweight or suffer from obesity. But during the training, they notice that actually the weight, I mean, how their body looks like, it's just at the top of the iceberg. It's more just a symptom of a lot of things which are actually underneath. And in a mindful eating training, we address those other aspects. We address the causes of a certain eating behavior. And what we address in this research was is the lack of contact or connection we have with nature outside ourselves. So nature means also food, where I mean the earth, the connection with the earth, where the food comes from, and connection with our inner nature. Is that one of the reasons why people have certain disturbed eating behavior? So we were actually exploring that level of causes why there is, if you call it on global level, why there's obesity or why there's overweight. So, but we were actually addressing overweight and obesity in a very indirect way. So there was another shift of attention. So am I clear how I explained it to you?
Yes, yes.
Okay, yeah.
Thank
so
you.
One hand there's we can look at relapse as a natural process, in an intervention, and it's often for people a stepping stone where they can learn a lot. And on the other hand, there is that aspect of non-striving and focusing on not the top of the iceberg, but what is actually underneath, what is under the water and causing all this kind of behavior or this kind of intentions people have. Is this helpful for you, Karen?
Yes. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So thank you, Karen, for that excellent question. I'm going to mute you now. And we have a question that came in typed from Kathy, and she asks, what is the name of the book that you used in the study?
Well, it's a good question. It's a book of Jan Chozenbees. Jan Chozenbees is now, she was at the board of Center for Mindful Eating, and she's now on the advisory council of the Center for Mindful Eating. And Jan Chozenbees, she wrote a very interesting book if you want to deepen your knowledge and experience in mindful eating. And it calls Mindful Eating, A Joyful Relationship with Food. But if you go to to the Center for Mindful Eating and you type in her name, you will see, you can have a look at her articles or the webinars she has done. It's very interesting.
Thank you, Caroline. I don't see any more hands right now, but if you would like to ask a question of Caroline, if you would click the little hand in your panel, I could unmute you and we'd be happy to have you ask a question. Well, I don't see any more questions. Did you have any closing points, Caroline?
Okay, no, I'm going to the last slide then. And well, thank you everybody for joining this webinar, and more information you can see on the website of the Center for Mindful Eating.org. Thank you everybody.
So thank you so much, Caroline. This has just been a wonderful presentation. And I'd like to also thank our audience today. This now will end our program titled Food, Sustainability, and the Role of Mindfulness. And thank you again for your membership and support of the Center for Mindful Eating.